As always, the FF Junkie 85 on Twitter, Hamid Sanju, and of course we have my co-host Kyle Senra, and you can find him on Twitter at Senra Says. And today we're of course going to be breaking down another Dynasty roster. This one is a Superflex roster. We'll also be talking about our top 5 Dynasty wide receivers as well. Kyle, how's it going, man? We have another game. We have 2 games today, actually.
Well, 3 if you count the CFL game. First Canadian quarterback to start a CFL game in quite a while. So Nathan Rourke getting the start for the BC Lions. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't really know what preseason games are on. I frankly don't care.
So for everybody listening here, don't know, Kyle actually lives in Canada, and he is a CFL junkie, and he's also playing DFS CFL. Do you have a roster today, Kyle?
Yeah, I joined. I've got a few 50-50 lineups set, but also joined like the GPPs tournaments and like 20. I joined a 20 entry tournament, so I spent yesterday just manually making 20 lineups. I don't have any fancy algorithm set for that, especially CFL. I don't know. I watch enough. Usually, I could. Last week was a little weird because of podcast and recording stuff. We recorded a podcast during one of the games, unfortunately, and this week I'll be traveling. But most weeks I try to watch every game, so I kind of give that edge, that insight.
All right, so you guys can reach out to Kyle, of course, to discuss DFS regarding CFL. For those who play, I don't play. I personally don't play DFS at all, actually. But
I just put out an article too at Going for Two, so you can go to goingfor2.com, look in the DFS section. It should be there for week 2 pricing on DraftKings in particular for the CFL DFS.
All right, and the Doc gives us a little bit of a shout out. Have a great show, guys. Doc will be back with you all next week. Everyone, you can reach out to the Doc. He told us to let you all know. You can reach out to him with any injury questions you guys have on Twitter. He is available, and to me at least, he's always available. I reach out to him regarding my baseball fantasy lineups all the time, and he is always ready and quick with his responses. He's even taken my roster and did his own analysis on it to give me feedback on what I can do to improve my entire roster. So Doc is dedicated not only to himself, to us, but also to all y'all. So please feel free to reach out to him. And Kyle, without further ado, my man, let's get this show started.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about a few notes that have been taking place lately. A little bit of surprising. AJ Green's actually performing. He's getting a little bit of a hype with the Cardinals. And are you buying into this hype about AJ? Is AJ Green, one, a viable candidate to bounce back from last season? Or is this all just talk out of training camp? Because they really aren't being that physical in training camp, of course.
He got 100 targets last year and only caught 43 passes, had like 600 yards. So he was like the most inefficient he could possibly be. And it seemed like he was healthy. So, like, I don't know how Kyler Murray's going to, Joe Burrow was a rookie and, inefficient in his own right in a lot of ways, but so is Kyler Murray. Like, at this point, I'm not going to say that Kyler Murray's a better passer than Burrow. So, especially in Dynasty, I'm completely sold out on AJ Green. I'm done with him completely. I'd much rather have Kirk and Rondale, and even if you're not getting that production right away, I just think there's no value whatsoever. So,
well, at this point, you'd be lucky to get a third for AJ Green, let alone a fourth. Yeah. I mean, at this point, if you have AJ Green, you just play it out as is. My personal opinion: last year he was 106th ranked amongst all pass catchers in catchable balls thrown to him. So he wasn't exactly getting a lot of targets that were accurate as well deep down the field. Burrow did struggle with the deep ball. That is where his weakness was, the passing game. So with going to go ahead,
isn't he going to a quarterback though that also struggled to throw the deep ball? I don't know if you have Kyler Murray's numbers there. I'd like to hear those.
No, I did not have. I do not have Kyler Murray's numbers pulled up right now.
I know Scott Connors kind of talked about that. Like Murray's been one of the most inefficient quarterbacks. Really, like I know everyone thinks that Lamar Jackson is like everyone would. I think the perception is, Kyler Murray's a better passer than Jackson. But honestly, the per throw numbers, it's all favored towards Jackson fairly heavily. Jackson just doesn't get the volume, right? Like so, the Cardinals are more willing to kind of live with Murray's mistakes, but I don't know if that coaching staff is the necessarily great, right? I mean, and that's the thing with AJ Green is the offensive calling going to allow him to be in his best position to succeed? Maybe with Zach Taylor, it didn't last year. I don't really know that Cliff Kingsbury is that answer either. So yeah, I'm just like you said, like if AJ Green is a third or a fourth, I think I'd rather have the third or fourth. Honestly, like I just give me that shot at a running back next year. I'd rather have that than AJ Green personally. So I'm of the opinion if you can sell him for literally anything, do it. I don't care if it's a 4th round pick in 2023. I'll make that pick. Hopefully it's a running back, right? Like better than what AJ Green can get. I just because I don't know that he's. I mean, 100 targets last year was amazing, but you could never play him. So I'd like if he gets 100 targets this year, what's the guarantee it's not just the exact repeat of last year?
Well, to your point though, Burrow was his completion percentage with the deep ball was 20%. That ranked 36th amongst all eligible quarterbacks. And then if you take Kyler Murray, he was twice as efficient, but that's still not saying a whole lot. 40%, which was ranked 19th amongst all QBs. So to your point, yeah, he is a little bit more efficient with the deep ball, but I mean, 40% is not exactly great either. That's less than half the passes down the field. So we'll see how it goes. But from a redraft standpoint, I think there is some value to be had there with AJ Green. But as far as from Dynasty standpoint, if you have him, you hold him at this point. There isn't a whole lot you're going to get for him. I think you might have a decent wide receiver 3-4 range, give or take, maybe a few wide receiver 2 games based upon how many touchdowns he gets. But he's not going to get you 100 yards. He's not going to get you double-digit receptions at this point. Hell, I don't even think he can get you double-digit targets on a consistent basis in this offense, even though it's one of the fastest offenses in the league. So, but we'll see what happens. But moving on to the next topic, and this is one I really wanted to focus on a little bit. Swift is dealing with an injury, of course, and Damian Williams, we've seen, he's no slouch as a running back. But he's on an offense that's expected to be one of the worst offenses and overall one of the worst teams in the league for that matter. So what if you're a dynasty owner and you have Swift, of course you're not going to trade him. You're not going to be too concerned because it's temporary injury. He'll get better, he'll be fine. But if you have Swift, would it be wise? I would say it would be wise to go and see if you can trade for Damian Williams. Because you want
Jamal Williams, you mean?
I'm sorry, Jamal Williams, that's correct, yes. So at that point, how much are you willing to pay to get Jamal Williams? And are you even doing that?
See, I feel like Jamal Williams kind of has standalone value less than a handcuff, right? And I mean, the problem is that he's going to be one of the most expensive handcuffs to get. So honestly, I kind of think the opposite. If I have Swift, what I'm trying to do is bolster my running back depth elsewhere. Get someone else that's I know is going to be a starter as many weeks as possible that I can play alongside Swift. I'm kind of getting away from the handcuffing. Now, again, I don't really view Jamal Williams as a handcuff because he does have standalone value. So, like, if you have him and Swift on the same team, you could, in theory, play both on a week-to-week basis. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I'm really. I feel like that caps your upside pretty significantly, though. So that's why I wouldn't look to overpay. If I'm the Swift manager and I can get Jamal Williams for a third, great. But if I'm like in Superflex having to pay a second, I don't know that I really want to do that. I think there's other running backs I'd rather buy for that price. Like, I feel like a Superflex second is what I want to go buy Darrell Henderson for. Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin. Those are guys that I feel like could be more consistent throughout the season. So, I mean, I like Williams, but I'm not necessarily chasing out to get him just because I have a Swift manager and I have those injuries. I'm looking to get Williams.
Dude, groin injuries, that type of injury, hamstring, quad issues, groin injuries, they tend to linger. They do. We've seen over the years, like look at last year, for instance, I believe it was David Montgomery who started out actually a little slow because he actually suffered a groin injury, I think 2 or 3 weeks prior to the season starting. So he did start out slow. We have plenty of background with these groin injuries coming out. So with Swift, if he starts out slow, don't panic. It's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. But if you can get Jamal Williams, I try to at least, only because if he re-aggravates, he comes back too soon. Too many variables there for that. So, in my opinion, I think you try to go get Jamal Williams. I wouldn't pay too much to get him. I'm not willing to pay more than a mid-third. That's
I can go 301. Like if it's super flex, I'll take any third. I'll throw any third really, but. Again, if I'm the 301, I'm also my team's not that great. I'm not really looking to compete. So why are you putting that on running back? So maybe that point is there. But because again, if the person who has Williams charging for a second, I'm looking for other running backs from other teams to pay for that price. I think he's worth buying, but not worth overpaying for. Because I think once you get to that range, just go buy someone else who's going to be the starter all year. Like because if the manager's asking for a second, I'm just going to go buy Mike Davis for that price. I think who's one of the most undervalued running backs in Dynasty.
He's very undervalued.
So even with that news, I think I'd rather just go buy Mike Davis. If you're DeAndre Swift and you're worried, go buy Mike Davis, go buy Myles Gaskin, go buy David Johnson. I think I'd rather buy those guys than Jamal Williams just for the handcuff.
Give me this in order then. Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, out of those two, who would you much rather prefer?
I think, let's see, I'm going to look at the Dynasty rankings right now. I feel like I have Gaskin ahead of Davis, but if I'm looking to win now, I feel like I'd rather have Davis for like just a 1 year team. Like if it's like I'm going to have him as my RB3 and I know I'm just looking for the points, I'd rather have Davis. But overall Dynasty value, because Gaskin's much younger and he was actually a rookie profile, I believed, and I know he didn't get the draft capital. So yeah, I do have them one spot. I have Gaskin at 24, Mike Davis at 25.
But again, wow, that's awfully close. And this is why I love it, because we're very far apart as far as I have Mike Davis at ranked 47th, RB 47 in Dynasty. I have Myles Gaskin RB 25 in Dynasty.
Okay, so how do you have him at 47 if we expect he's going to get 200 carries this year and catch a bunch of passes?
If this was redraft, he'd be much higher. He'd probably be around the range what you have with this low RB2 range. But in Dynasty, though, you have to think ahead long term. I don't expect him to keep. Now, it would not surprise me one bit that after the season that they bring another running back. Or I believe his contract's 2 years. I believe I could be wrong about that. I'll have to look his contract up. But I don't see him as a long term answer, and I don't see him as necessarily. He's proven now. Last year, he got off to a great start when CMC went down as a workhorse. But the problem was he started to lose momentum. His efficiency dropped, and that's because he's not used to that workload. The expectation is that he actually trained and worked hard over the offseason to actually be able to be that workhorse back. Now, he's not going to be a 3-down back. I'm sure they're going to mix them in. Let's see what this offense is going to look like coming into this season. Maybe they do rely more on the running game. But I can't trust that past 1 year, which is why I have him
my thing is like to have him at 46, you probably have a bunch of running backs that might never have that at any point in their career, even if they're younger. Like, again, our favorite guy to rip on, Chase Edmonds. I don't think Chase Edmonds is ever going to be in a position to get a workload like Mike Davis. So I don't care if Chase Edmonds is 5 years younger. You'll never get that production out of him. So I'd much rather have Davis than Edmonds, even given the age. Just the points, right? Because I don't ever see Chase Edmonds being a workhorse. We think Mike Davis is about to be a workhorse this year. That means a lot to me.
Do you think Mike Davis is going to be a workhorse 2 years after the season in 2022?
No, but I don't think Chase Edmonds is going to be either. So why would I go with the guy that I think is a complete unknown with the other guy that's a known?
Age and opportunity.
But I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. The Cardinals have already shown they do not want him to be a workhorse back, and they signed James Conner, so even they had every opportunity to make him a workhorse this year, and they still don't want to. And he's on the final year of his rookie contract.
He is.
What has Chase Edmonds done to make any team go, that's the guy we want? We're going to pay him a ton of money. So I'm banking on the fact that he's never going to be that workhorse. Give me the guy that will be a workhorse this year.
You know, I love the fact that we're debating this much on this, because let's jump right into the next.
And I know I was low on it. Like, I dropped Akers significantly. Like, so you still have Akers. You have Akers still ahead of Mike Davis?
No, I have Akers in Dynasty. Absolutely, I do.
Because that's my thing. Like, Akers might never come back to be a workhorse ever again.
Like, he may not. That risk. See, until I don't know more from Akers, I gotta see next year. I'm not dropping him too much from my rankings a whole lot right now, only because I want to see how he returns next year. So right now, I have him as a soft RB16 right now. As a soft RB16. I'm going to still, give it some time, let more reports come out before I decide ultimately where I'm going to put him. I would say he's a soft RB16 for me right now. That's where I have him ranked. Patrick Spettle asks,
Gallup.
Michael Gallup. What are your thoughts?
Interested? Like, do you want us to know about what we think about Michael Gallup, where we have him ranked? Like, a little context here. Context does matter, right? And
context
again, back to
matters. And this is going to make me curious, because this goes back to opportunity, age. So I'm curious to know. You know what? Since Patrick asks, let's do it. Where do you have Michael Gallup ranked?
I'm pulling up wide receivers right now. I guess so. I have him at 39, wide receiver 39.
We're not too far off. I have him at 44.
Okay.
So, and the only concern here is that with Michael Gallup, of course, we have CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper there, of course. And then I think he is a matchup-based option until he leaves Dallas, because He's going to be the third option on that team. Now, they have Amari Cooper. He's not going anywhere. CeeDee Lamb just, they drafted him 2 years ago. Oh, does he have a good comeback year? That's his question. Okay, so this is more of a redraft question.
Comeback. So come back to what? I'm just going to pull up Michael Gallup's stats real quick.
Well, all three receivers actually finished. I believe none of them had over 1,000 yards. They all finished relatively close. I believe. No, I could be wrong about that. Actually, I'm not sure if any of them had 1,000 yards, or was that the Steelers?
Yeah, and Gallup didn't. He had 843, but he had 1,100 yards the year before. Only one extra touchdown, and he only had 7 more catches. So it really was the yards efficiency. He went from 16.8 yards a reception in 2019 to 14.3, which, I mean, that 14.3 is still pretty good. So with Dak,
wasn't there though.
Exactly. But I mean, last year he still saw 105 targets. That's crazy. He had 56% catch rate, so only 59 catches. But like he saw a ton of targets. It's funny. That was similar to AJ Green, but I think Michael Gallup did way more than what AJ Green did with 105 targets. So, I don't know if I don't know that Cooper's going to be there next year. I think there is a chance that they could get rid of Amari Cooper. I'm going to pull it up right now, with his contract, but I feel like there was most of the dead cap was in the first 2 years. So like the Cowboys, I think in theory could get out of it, and they could decide to give that money towards Michael Gallup and make him the number 2 with CeeDee. I think that scenario is nice, or the scenario you said that he leaves via free agency.
But Gallup is also in a contract year. What makes us think that Gallup's going to either take a walk or he decides, okay, yeah, I'll stay with the Cowboys. And yeah, he's of course going to be the cheaper out of the two to keep. And to your point, you're correct. They do have an out clause. He will have a $6 million cap hit though for 2022. If the Cowboys decide to move on from Amari Cooper after this season, they will have a cap of $6 million.
16. They get to save $16 million, right? Because the cap hit right now is $22 million every year, so they save $16 million by cutting him. I don't think Gallup's going to command that 16. So if you cut Cooper, you can use that money to sign Gallup and another player, right? So I see that scenario where Gallup's the number 2 with the Cowboys long term, or like you said, he leaves via free agency and chases a contract to a team that's going to want him as a top 2 guy. So I feel like either way, like Gallup is definitely a hold. So even if he doesn't have the comeback season, I think from a dynasty perspective, I think his value could increase next offseason, even if his production doesn't. But that being said, with Dak Prescott for most of the season, I would expect to see something closer to his career average in yards per reception, which is 15.6. Which is basically almost a yard and a half more than last year.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit if Gallup finishes as a wide receiver 3. It would not this year.
Yeah, me neither. So yeah, I could definitely see him, bouncing back, but I don't know that the end of year ceiling is higher than wide receiver 28, 29, 30, something like that.
Ooh, a little higher than what I would have thought. I would have thought probably more like wide receiver 36, 35, that range.
But I'm saying like the max possible output, right? Like
best case scenario, fair enough.
So yeah, I like it's tough to envision him being a wide receiver 2 at any point, but I think he could be a pretty boomer bust, like high end. Like he might be a wide receiver 2 on certain weeks. Like he has that kind of potential.
We have to move on to our next segment, but how crazy would it be if he actually this season goes ahead and signs with the Detroit Lions? How crazy would that be? All right, so and Patrick, if you can just quickly comment to let us know, was this a redraft related or dynasty related? All right, so hey, no problem, Patrick, anytime. That's what we're here for, buddy. You can reach out to us on Twitter as well if you have any other questions. So with that, we decided to
Twitter
do
handles on the screen
differently on this show. We're going to actually discuss our top 5 dynasty wide receivers, and we're going to start off with Kyle. So what we're going to do here is Kyle and I are going to go one at a time. He'll give me his top wide receiver. I'll give my number 2. He'll give his number 3, so on and so forth. But we're going to discuss the top 5 because we do also have to get to our roster. So with that said, Kyle, please lead off. Who is your number 1 dynasty wide receiver?
So at the top, and I think we're in agreement, Tyreek Hill is my number 1. He's got probably the most upside for any receiver on any given week. So like the ceiling's definitely there. And what he showed last year was a better level of consistency, a much higher floor than what he had in previous seasons. So it's buying in. Is that the truth? Is the higher level of consistency we saw last year going to be like the new normal for Hill? As he kind of developed that as he's now more of a veteran in the league, he's kind of figured out how not get taken out of a game completely, or maybe the Chiefs have figured out that, okay, if they're, if he's being blanket covered, they'll figure out ways to get him the ball. He won't put up zeros anymore. So I think, higher floor, and maybe his floor will never be what Davante Adams' floor is, or even Stephon Diggs with that target share that he had last year. But I think he's got a higher ceiling than either of those on a week-to-week basis. That being said, if Davante Adams scores 18 touchdowns, again, he's probably the number one receiver. I just don't know that that's necessarily realistic. But like what Hill did last year, it feels like it's repeatable. It feels like he could do that again. And the fact that he's younger than Adams, younger than Diggs, attached to the best quarterback in football right now, in maybe the best offense in football right now, I have Tyreek Hill as my number one dynasty wide receiver.
We're close, but I have Davante Adams ranked as my number one wide receiver. I did actually, however, I was a little concerned about Davante Adams only because if he cannot sign a deal with the Green Bay Packers, the Packers don't come to an agreement with him. That may be concerning. Where would he play next season? Does Aaron Rodgers actually play after the season? Remember, even though the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers came to an understanding, it's only for this year. Aaron Rodgers only has committed to this year. He is not committed to next season. He can essentially the Packers can essentially let him walk if they really want to, or trade him. Not let him walk.
Theoretically, any player could just retire at any point. So. Like, that's no different regardless.
Carson Palmer when he was with the Bengals. So now, and to your point about age, Davante Adams is only 1 year older than Tyreek Hill, believe it or not. It's crazy, You would think Tyreek Hill's like 25 or 26. He's 27, and Adams is 28. So they're both relatively the same age. But for me,
Adams will be 29 though, like really soon. So I think there's a 2 year difference. But okay,
I don't know the birthdays exactly. I don't have that.
I thought he was turning 29 this year.
Okay. So, I just think Davante Adams has that skill set where they're close enough for me in age where that didn't play a factor. The bigger factor for me is what happens after this year. That is the only concerning factor for me. But even without now, the good point that you make though is Patrick Mahomes and Hill are tied together for quite a few number of years. So that is something. Stability is very key in Dynasty, and that is what you do get with Tyreek Hill and Mahomes. I feel like I'm killing my own point here with Davante Adams.
I'm curious. So you so I guess the question is with those two, Hill and Adams, how high should they go in drafts? Like what's the they're the wide receiver one, but where are they going relative to other positions? I think that's also interesting, like in Dynasty Startup, right? And I know we're just doing a Dynasty Startup together right now, and you ended up with both Hill and Adams, so that is interesting.
I did. I actually did, and it's funny you mentioned that actually. So for our viewers, we're actually in a Dynasty Startup draft right now as we speak, and actually it's a Superflex league. It's funny, we're actually discussing a Superflex team in this show today. So I can tell you right now, I actually took Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill back to back. I took Hill at 1.7 and Davante Adams at 2.6, and I feel like that is significant. Now I personally attack the wide receiver position first, no matter what the league is normally. But I usually wait on quarterback a little bit. And Kyle, thanks for sharing that draft board with us. So that's actually pretty cool. I got to learn from you how you did that. Maybe you can sit down after the show and talk about that.
And you click it and you click entire screen and share screen. It's actually pretty easy. Just as easy as drafting on Sleeper, right? This was super fun, but interesting because like if you look here, Hamid's team, you see. Yeah, he was the first one to take a receiver. He was also the second person to take a receiver. So
interesting. I haven't noticed that. So you just mentioned it.
I didn't either until I brought up the draft board. It was looking like, Adams was the second receiver off the board. But I am curious because if you say you have Adams 1, why is it that you took Hill first?
That's a great question. And to your point, so the reason why I was drafting, right, I was like, okay, so I forecasted out, okay, it's a super flex league. And the funny thing is I know the guys that I'm drafting with. I knew there was going to be a heavy RB run because look at the first picks. Look at those quarterbacks that went. If I'm not mistaken, the first pick was also a quarterback. So I just had a feeling that I could get Davante Adams a little bit later. And even if I couldn't, eventually, I could get Justin Jefferson. Another wide receiver that I really like a lot. And they're all really close. There's no really wrong answer here. But at the time of the draft, I felt like, okay, I may not get Hill, but I know I might be able to get Adams only because of that age factor. And folks might be concerned about Aaron Rodgers a little bit. So that's why I felt like I could get Adams, but I knew I could not get Tyreek Hill. So
trying to play the board and less about your rankings.
That's about the. Sometimes you have to do that, but also
It
you have to
worked.
keep in mind, and it worked. I took a little chance, but I knew if I drafted Adams first, I would not get Hill back. I was pretty certain about that. So
I don't
at
know.
least
Just
it's how I
because everyone
felt.
did go so wide receiver, running back, and quarterback heavy, you might have, but we'll never know. It is
We'll
true.
never know at this point, exactly. And so moving on to our next. So we've talked about Devontae and Tyreek Hill. That's our 1 and 2. You have Hill
No,
at 1. I have Adams. Oh, you don't have Adams at 2.
I do not have Adams at 2.
Well, let's talk about number 2 then. Even
I
though it's
have
my turn to talk, we just talked about
well
Devontae
Tyreek Hill.
Adams. I mean
Right? I mean,
Tyreek Hill,
you've
right?
got Hill. So well, quick, is there like anything you want to add about Hill? Like why you have Hill over, like not so much behind Adams, but over everyone else? Was there anything that I didn't bring up that you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered pretty much all those factors. I just feel like Devontae Adams has just first of all, these 2 wide receivers, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them being number 1. I just that chemistry, they both have great chemistry with their quarterbacks. I just feel like Devontae Adams' ceiling with those touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, we've not seen that from Tyreek Hill. The ceiling of touchdowns that Devontae Adams has shown, and that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. There is a little bit of risk with what happens after this season if the Packers can't come to an agreement with Devontae Adams or Aaron Rodgers, for that matter. But we'll see what happens. But overall, I just feel like the main factor for me was the touchdowns. I think Devontae Adams' ceiling at touchdowns is significantly higher than Tyreek Hill, where Tyreek Hill will get you a ton of yards and receptions. I think he lacks a little bit of the upside with the touchdowns because of course, Travis Kelce being there. And understandable. Kelce's a beast. But let's go to wide receiver number 3. Who do you have at 3?
Well, again, I have Adams at, actually I don't even have Adams at 3. He's even lower than that.
Oh my God.
But it's just the age, right? And it's the fact that it's not that you said or, but it's actually an and. Adams has to re-sign with the Packers and Rodgers has to re-sign. Like those
That's
are two
true.
things, right? So you're relying on 2 things happening. Now, very well, what Adams might be waiting for is he might want to see where Aaron Rodgers goes and he just follows him. So if Rodgers signs with the Raiders, perfect. Adams just signs there and he's the number 1 wide receiver for the Raiders, right?
They
So
built the NBA, the NFL, the NBA version in the NFL, huh? Build their team.
or I mean it's Adams being like this guy's like the best, second, third best quarterback in the NFL. Like I really don't want to play with anyone else. I don't want to play with Jordan Love. I already went through the Brett Hundley experience and that was just awful. So anyway, so I think that uncertainty has him a little lower in my ranks. He's still in my top 5, but yeah, not quite this high. At number 2, I actually have Stephon Diggs. The similar argument to Hill, he's younger than Adams, and for the foreseeable future tied to a quarterback. And, I don't think Josh Allen's as elite as Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or maybe even Russell Wilson. But I still think what they showed last year, a great connection. Diggs had, his best season ever. And he's had some good quarterback play, whether through, like it or not, Sam Bradford is at least a pretty good quarterback. Like I know he was injured all the time and he probably got paid too much money, but he was a pretty accurate quarterback, good thrower of the football. Like, you could definitely do a lot worse. And then, the Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater years, Kirk Cousins, though, and you got elite quarterback play. But yet Diggs almost found a new level in terms of volume, yards. I think a career high in yards of 1,500. One of the things I believe in is touchdown regression and looking at those numbers. Peter Howard's calculated this out. The NFL average for touchdown, it's a touchdown every 154 yards or something like that. And that's like a 10-year average. So on 1,500 yards, Stephon Diggs should have had double-digit touchdowns instead of only 8. So if Diggs can reproduce the volume from last year and reproduce the yards efficiency, he's actually got room to improve his touchdown numbers. And maybe a second year with Josh Allen makes that happen. I know my co-host Brad Harvin on the Full Press Fantasy Pod, he actually has Diggs as his number 1 wide receiver for redraft this year. And I don't think he's that far off. And so I think Diggs could not only reproduce what he did last year, maybe even add on to that. So he's my wide receiver too.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned about Diggs real quick here. So I have Diggs actually not far behind. Well, relatively speaking, given that we're discussing the top 5. I have Diggs actually at wide receiver 4. And right ahead of him, I have A.J. Brown at 3.
A.J. Brown ahead of Jefferson. Okay.
I do have A.J. Brown ahead of Jefferson here. And let's talk about A.J. Brown and ahead of Jefferson. Let's just tie that together, I guess. Where do you have Jefferson? I'm curious.
I have him at 4, actually. One spot behind A.J. Brown, who I have at 3. I actually have both ahead of Adams, who I do have at 5.
Okay, so you have Adams at 5. So, okay, can you go give me a top 5 real quick?
So, Devontae Adams 5, Justin Jefferson 4, A.J. Brown 3, Stephon Diggs 2, Tyreek Hill 1. So we have the same number 3 in AJ Brown.
We actually have the same top 5, but I mean, just in different orders. So I have Adams at 1, Hill at 2, Brown at 3, Stephon Diggs at 4, and Jefferson at 5. So
we're pretty cold on Jefferson compared to consensus because, like, through the community, and obviously in our startup we're looking at on the board screen right now was not the case. Then again, Hamid was the one picking, so he definitely influenced that directly, very directly.
I probably did.
But in other startup drafts I've done, it's been more auction contract style. I believe in both the startups I've done that have been contract auction, Justin Jefferson has gotten the highest contract or highest bid amount for any wide receiver. And like I've seen like mock drafts or dynasty rankings, pretty consensus, Justin Jefferson is the number 1 wide receiver in dynasty. So me having him at 4, you having him at 5, we're pretty cold, relative to consensus on Jefferson.
Pretty cold. So the reason why I'm a little like, I hate to say it because, okay, I'm not bashing anyone here. I love all these wide receivers. I'll be very happy with any of them being my wide receiver 1 any given day of the week in dynasty or redraft. But rankings is not just about the individual player. This isn't basketball where the individual talent matters over everything else. It's the NFL where the teams that's built around the player that matters a ton too. Now, Kirk Cousins, of course, is there. He's entering his age 33 season, but he signed through 2022. So the issue I have here is after 20, and it's all about forecasting. That's what Dynasty is all about. Also forecasting, and I think the future into account a ton. So with that said, now the Vikings can't just move on from Kirk Cousins. They can't just cut him. He carries a dead cap weight of $45 million next year. That's a ridiculous number. First of all,
he's on the team the next 2 years for sure.
He is. He's on the team for the next 2 years. But after that, what happens to him? And can Justin Jefferson flourish with a different quarterback? Now, of course, that's way too hard to predict. In 2022, it's 2 years from now, so much can happen. But that's enough uncertainty for me to knock him down to number 5, where of course, what do all these receivers have in common? Devontae Adams, Hill. Now, okay, Adams is the exception here because we don't know what's going to happen with his situation. But everyone else, Hill, Brown, Diggs, we know what their quarterbacks are going to be. Whereas Justin Jefferson, after the next 2 seasons, what will he look like without? And Thielen won't likely not be there as well at that point. So what this team looks like, that forecast, it's hard to predict because there could potentially so much room for change on that team. Where is why I knocked him down a little bit. But again, if anyone puts him as number 1, I would not disagree with you. I wouldn't hate it. I would be totally fine with that. But for me, that's enough question marks for me to at least knock him down a little bit.
I would respect the fantasy points. And Justin Jefferson last year at half point PPR scored, I remember looking this up, was 14.4. I guess I can go through. I've got the chart somewhere, but rather than we'll show people me messing around trying to find files. I remember it being 14.4, and I remember it was DK Metcalf scored that. DeAndre Hopkins scored that. AJ Brown didn't though. AJ Brown, his points per game was it was 15 point something. Like, he was a top 5 receiver last year. And
he only had 104 targets, right? 106, 104 targets.
And I mean, yeah, he's got Julio Jones coming, but they've also, Julio Jones can kind of replace Corey Davis's volume, who replaces Jonnu Smith's volume. I almost see it just going back towards Brown and Julio. So I think Brown, incredibly efficient touchdown wise, maybe there's a room for regression, but the truth is 2 years in a row, Tannehill has been uber efficient. We talk about Kirk Cousins efficiency. Tannehill's at like a per throw basis on the same level at Mahomes. And at times over the last 2 seasons been higher in terms of yards efficiency, touchdown per attempt. Like, Tannehill's pretty ridiculous. So Brown gets that type of attachment. The way I see it, I prefer Tannehill slightly over Cousins, so I prefer Brown slightly over Jefferson. And again, long term, it seems like Tannehill's probably a bit more secure long term. Although, I mean, he's over 32. Or 30, he's over 30 as well. Actually, he might be 32. I think he's 31. So, maybe that long-term future, I believe I think he might only have 2 or 3 years left on his contract. I think 3 years left.
So he is signed till 2023, but the team does have an out after 2022 season. But
so not that much different than Cousins.
Well, no, however, the dead cap, though, the hit is $18.8 million. So I don't see them cutting him because it wouldn't make any sense. So I think,
if they're still making the playoffs every year, they're going to obviously keep him. He might. he probably has a better chance to see another contract beyond this than Kirk Cousins does.
I
So I think is that the
100% agree with that.
More stability for Brown, it seems like, even with Julio coming in. Yeah, we both have him at wide receiver 3, so we're definitely. It seems like Brown is our favorite of those young receivers because Brown, Jefferson, and Metcalf, they're all like super closely linked. Like I almost had Metcalf in the top 5 actually. I have him at 6 in Dynasty, just because his rookie season wasn't so great. Not what Jefferson and Brown did. And last year was amazing. Is last year the truth with Metcalf? Can he step further maybe? Or does he maybe meet to an average between what his rookie and sophomore years were? And year 3 isn't so impressive. So just maybe slight more hesitation with Metcalf. Obviously you had him outside the top 5 as well. But that was my close debate on like how low am I dropping Adams with the age and the uncertainty? But I couldn't put him lower than 4.
So just one quick point off with Justin Jefferson though. He was 8th in the league amongst completed yards after catch with 450 yards. So that's a stat that's a very open stat. It's a very volatile stat. It's very hard to predict that from year to year. So I'm curious to see how year 2 goes. Is he going to be able to maintain that type of yards after catch like George Kittle? If the year that he broke the record, that lasted for a season, because Kelsey broke the record for most receiving yards by a tight end. Kittle led the league in yards after catch, and that's where he was able to make up a lot of his yards. So I'm curious to see how year 2 goes with Justin Jefferson, and what that yard after catch, is that sustainable, or is that something that was going? I would see that number drops, what that looks like. I would love to see his touchdown numbers go up though, and that is my one concern with Justin Jefferson. If I recall, Thielen had 14 touchdowns, which is ridiculous. You wouldn't guess that. I would not have guessed that if I had not looked that up. I would have thought 8 or 9 touchdowns. But Thielen had 14 touchdowns. Now, Justin Jefferson had 7. But if we can see that number go up, that will be. I think then that would actually move Justin Jefferson up. I would move it to number 1 overall. If I can see that number go up even a little bit more, I'd be comfortable moving up. And if he can maintain the same stats that he did last year, of course, 1,444 yards is not going to happen. I don't think that happens. But even if it's like 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns or 11 touchdowns, I think that can be. I would be comfortable enough to move him up my rankings if I could see that from him this year.
Yeah, for sure. But it does seem like Justin Jefferson would be a really good sell in Dynasty right now, because it seems like you could name your price and get it with him. So you could, with all the uncertainty with Adams, maybe a little less now, but certainly if you did that in the summer, how much more you would have got added to Adams if you gave him Justin Jefferson, right? So I still think Justin Jefferson's a good sell, even though we have him both as top 5 Dynasty wide receivers. Again, his price though right now seems like it is Dynasty wide receiver 1. So if you can get my thing is, sell whoever the wide receiver 1 is in Dynasty. Like that's on a year-to-year basis, it really hasn't repeated. Antonio Brown came in and had 3 years in a row of wide receiver 1 numbers. But I think the last time a wide receiver repeated as the number 1 fantasy wide receiver before Brown was, I think, Jerry Rice. So we're talking 20 plus years.
That's a great stat.
Which also speaks to how amazing Antonio Brown was. Like that stretch run with Brown, those really from 2013 to 2018. Like that is 5 magical seasons of wide receiver production that, even from a year-to-year basis, even trumps what Adams has done. So pretty incredible. Obviously, last year Adams' year was ridiculous. Again, 18 touchdowns. I think his previous career high is 12. So
and
there's a lot of.
What's crazy is I can definitely see that happening again. It would not shock me. And remember also, he didn't play all 16 games. Devontae Adams did not play all 16. I believe he missed 2 games.
He missed
as well, right?
Yeah, he missed the Falcons game. He might have missed 3 games actually.
So he
missed the Saints game, he missed the Falcons game, and then they had a bye, and I think he missed the first Bucks game, and they brought him for the Texans game. So I think he missed 3 games. Honestly.
His game log shows that he did play 14 games, but he may not have. Okay. He may not have had. Let's see here, really quick. No, he played all the games. Yeah, he played 14 full games.
Okay, so he did play against the Bucks. I guess I want to forget both the Packers games against the Bucks last year, the regular season and playoff one, obviously. Anyway, Jared's saying hi, Hamid. Jared, Kyle, but that's fine. Hamid's amazing. I also really like
Kyle,
Hamid,
right?
more than me.
Hey, Jared, he must be loving the fact that we're talking about Ryan Tannehill. He is a Ryan Tannehill truther to the heart and to the core.
Shout out to Gladys for sniping him hard on me in that draft. I can pull the screen up again if everyone wants, but mid third round, I thought I was going to get Tannehill at the 312, and 2 picks before she grabbed him. So that really hurt my heart. But yeah, those are our top 5 receivers in Dynasty.
Yeah, and that was and the next show for us where we talk about top 5 Dynasty running backs. So there's a little teaser for you guys. So without further ado, let's jump right into the team that we're breaking down. Again, this is a full PPR Dynasty startup. This draft actually just completed about a couple of last week, and it is a super flex roster. So with that, we have the quarterback position, where this person has Stafford, Tannehill, we just talked about, Wentz, Daniel Jones, and Jacob Eason. What are your thoughts about this quarterback room? It's actually a really solid super flex quarterback room this person has.
It is, especially from a production standpoint. You're going to score a lot of points. You have enough depth to play the matchups. My worry is beyond this year, this quarterback room starts to maybe lose some depth. I mean, let's say Wentz has an awful season with the Colts. I mean, I don't know how much more they're on the hook money-wise for him in terms of how many years, but that one's probably tougher to see. But certainly, I know you probably agree with this. I know you don't like Daniel Jones. There's a very good chance he's not a starter next year. The Giants could move on, and every other team, I mean, he's still got 1 year left in his rookie contracts. The Giants will move on, keep him, hold him for a year. That after that, what's the future 2 years from now?
I'm sorry to cut you off, but did you
we need him to be a starter?
Video? Did you see the video today posted on Twitter where Daniel Jones threw he threw a pick, but the defender dropped it. There was no receiver in sight, and so, okay, the play, let me break down really quick. Just by the way, I'm a Giants fan. I hate Daniel Jones. I hated the pick. I say this almost every week, I feel like. I still hate it. We should have drafted Josh Allen on defensive end, but we didn't because we're idiots. And we decided to take this guy named Daniel Jones, who no one saw as a top 5 quarterback in that draft. Anyway, so the play was, if you guys want to go on Twitter and take a look at this, you can. It's there. So this is practice, of course, training camp. So the Giants are playing against their own defense. The defender beat the offensive lineman, but he did not tackle Daniel Jones. He just stopped next to Daniel Jones. Didn't touch him. Daniel Jones still threw a ball at a defender with no wide receiver within the 5-yard radius of that defender. That's how bad Daniel Jones is. And we don't need training camp this is not hype. This is not me overreacting to training camp. Just go look at last season. Forget stats. Pull up any game
Every
Daniel Jones you want.
His first 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
That's turnovers.
It's turnover machine. I think it's 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. The guy probably has more fumbles than interceptions. I'm just saying that. I don't know for sure. It's not that. I don't know.
Aaron Rodgers, I'm pretty sure, has way more fumbles than interceptions. So that's not necessarily a bad thing either.
It may not necessarily be a bad thing for Aaron Rodgers, but it's a horrible thing for someone.
Yeah, when you throw that many interceptions to Daniel Jones, I guess it's pretty bad. So actually, as a rookie, he was 24 and 12. So actually double. 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Last year was horrible, though. 11 and 10. 11 touchdowns only.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 13, 12. So it was 11 and 10. Okay. Even worse.
How do you, wow. From a 5.2 touchdown rate to a 2.5. That's atrocious. But honestly, another quarterback that was really bad last year was Carson Wentz. So, and if Stafford gets hurt, like the only thing is, I think, again, this year, this quarterback room seems fine, but future-wise, outside of Tannehill, it's really shaky. So that might be one move I'm trying to make now is I'm trying to trade Daniel Jones as soon as possible. I actually just made a trade in a Dynasty League, and yeah, I'm kind of in more of a full rebuild mode, but I just straight up gave Daniel Jones for a first. Give me a 2023 first.
Wait, and you got a first for Daniel Jones?
It's super flex, right? So obviously the quarterback.
Someone paid a first-round pick for Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
We need to get this person on the show. We need to find him for next week. I need to talk to him about this.
Actually, I think next week you got Eric Romanov coming on, but
I hope he was the guy we talked about.
It's not. Eric's on this league. I think, yeah, I'll look into that. But I mean, like I was pretty happy, but again, I'm also in a team that's kind of going in full rebuild, and I'm trying to accumulate picks. I've already got 4 picks in that 2023 rookie draft already in that first round. So clearly I'm eyeing that class. I kind of like what appears to be some of the talent that we were expecting to come out that year. So even so, rookie picks are rookie picks. But yeah, I'm in that move. So maybe for that team, that same advice. Like even though Daniel Jones is the 4th quarterback on this team, and with Eason there, I guess maybe Eason isn't the starter even if Wentz is out. But you kind of handcuff that to where if you need a third quarterback, you probably have him with the Colts. I would look to maybe sell Daniel Jones for that first. And, if this team is competitive, use that first to buy another player. Maybe it's another quarterback or just another, if you need to add depth at running back or wide receiver. Not that, this team is fairly deep at both. Maybe a little bit more depth at running back would be nice, but yeah, I think that. So you obviously like that plan of selling Daniel Jones for a pick, even if this team is competitive. If you get a first,
if someone is willing to throw you a first or a second, I sell Daniels for a second. I don't care if it's super flex. I would sell him for a second. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I think this will be the last year he actually starts for the Giants. Jacob Eason, of course, you hold him. It's a good thing that you do actually have him because you do have Wentz. But I think the core of Stafford and Tannehill is fantastic. I had the Tannehill at 14 and Stafford at 16 as my Dynasty amongst all quarterbacks. I might be a little lower than most on them, but I still think that their upside is QB1. Now
I've got Tannehill at 13, so you're not that much lower than I am. And I feel like I'm like a pretty high guy on Tannehill, so I think you're right. You're good.
Yeah, so with that said, so we would say if you want to make an adjustment, I would say, try to get a pick for Daniel if you can, but you really don't need him because you do have Wentz, Tannehill, and Stafford. And of course, you want to, in Superflex, I always believe you need at least 3 stars. You do have that. So Daniel Jones, if you want to get a pick for him, that's great. But we'll see where we can improve this roster, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
One more trade real quick, if you allow me. I know we want to get through this, but
sure.
Maybe is a play because this team has all their picks and seeming like this team is ready to compete.
Correct.
Do you upgrade Stafford? You throw Stafford and a first to go out and get try and target Dak Prescott. Maybe, everyone's a little worried about the injuries right now.
Stafford and a first is going to be enough? I don't think so for Dak. Dak's my QB4 in Dynasty. There's no QB5. I don't think.
To be fair, I've got Dak in our Dynasty startup. If someone came to me with Stafford and a first, I wouldn't take it, right? So yeah, maybe not. But I mean,
so let me ask you this: Deshaun Watson, Stafford.
Yeah, I do have Watson ranked higher in Dynasty, but it is really tough to pull the trigger on him. But
if someone offered you Deshaun Watson for Stafford right now, would you take it? Straight up. If not, what would it take?
Yeah, that one's tricky.
Stumped.
You do. I really haven't been buying Watson, so it's tough to know.
Okay, how about this? Trevor Lawrence or Stafford?
Oh, Lawrence.
Oh, Trevor Lawrence? Okay.
Yeah.
Trey Lance or Stafford?
Lance, Fields. I have all 3 of those rookies in my top 11. So.
Okay. So Joe Burrow, Stafford.
Burrow.
So pretty much all those quarterbacks, you would probably. So you were basically saying to the Dynasty community, if you have Stafford, go get those quarterbacks if you can, but it's not going to take. You're going to have to give.
It's probably more than a first for any of them. Maybe Burrow. Burrow might be the most attainable, actually. Everyone maybe we're a little worried about the injury right now. Stafford in a first might get you Burrow, but I don't know that it gets you any of the rookies. Like the hype on them is so high right now. But I mean, if the Burrow manager really believes, it might not be enough to get Burrow either. So I would explore that. But if it costs too much, maybe don't. But
the only way, if I'm the Burrow owner to trade for Stafford, if I'm a win now team, I just need that little more push from my quarterback position to get me over the hump. That's where I trade for him. But we do have to move on to the next position here, and that is the running back position. And they have Miles Sanders, Austin Eckler, David Montgomery, Tevin Coleman, and Jamal Williams. We did talk about Jamal Williams a little bit earlier about how he suddenly, actually, even before Swift got hurt with the groin injury, he was expected to be involved in the offense anyway. So, and also keep in mind, of course, Jamal Williams, Swift was not part of this new regime's draft class. So Jamal Williams has been getting a ton of hype from this. They really like Jamal Williams. They brought him in for a reason. So he was already going to have a role. So the fact that Swift is hurt, it sucks. No one wants injuries. Ask the doc with his book that he's written, of course. Injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't. Can be found on Amazon and also available on Kindle. But I do like Eckler. I do like Montgomery. I'm not a big fan of everyone else on this tier. What are your thoughts, Kyle?
Running back wise, yeah. I mean, you got to start 3 every week. That makes it complicated. Like, I mean, I'm fine with the Eckler, Montgomery, Sanders. Maybe you don't have a true RB1 there, but you've got 3 guys that are all going to be top 20 running backs probably. And then, Williams as a 4th is really good. My problem really is just the lack of depth. Tevin Coleman is the fifth. I'd like maybe a better fifth running back, and then there's nothing there. Like, especially if you have to start 3, I would want to roster at least 6 running backs on this team. And the fact that it's 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers, and I'm looking at this bench, and like Myers, Jonathan Peoples-Jones, Brian Edwards, and then on the practice squad, another 2 wide receivers. Like, I'm probably trying to trade away one of those wide receivers and get that extra depth for running backs. If someone still believes in Brian Edwards, get what you can for him. Honestly, if you really believe in Donald Peoples-Jones, I get keep him, but I mean, I wouldn't have any problem cutting him if it gets me a running back in his place.
So also keep in mind for Eckler, after he came back from his injury from week 11 onwards, he was an RB1. Not overall, but he was an RB1. I was thinking
more of value because, truthfully, I mean, Eckler and Montgomery could easily both be running back ones in production. I was speaking more value, right? Like at the end of this year, are either of them going to be ranked in the top 12 of Dynasty? Probably not.
I have Eckler at RB12. I have Montgomery at RB19, but I have Eckler at RB12, just at the cusp. And that's only because, now the concern though is, I'd be a lot higher on Eckler if I knew he could play 17 games.
I'd be higher if I knew he could get touchdowns. Like I know a couple of years ago with Melvin Gordon,
touchdown, but his PPR usage is so high. We don't necessarily need those 10 touchdowns from Eckler for him to be an RB1. We've seen that already. We have a pretty significant sample size with Philip Rivers and now with Herbert that he can be an RB1 without those touchdowns. He just needs to stay on the field, just like Chris Carson. Both of them just need to stay on the field. They'll be RB1s.
Yeah. So again, I don't think that you need to upgrade the top end of this running back room. I think add to the bottom end and just get more running back depth at the bottom end. Because I think like 1 through 5, you're fine, but have a 6th running back, have a 7th running back even, right? And I mean, I know there's another complication to this league in terms of starting lineup. We'll get to in a couple positions from now, but running back depth is important.
You will. So, okay, yeah, I would probably try targeting someone like maybe Kenneth Gainwell, for instance. Maybe Trey Sermon. You know what? As crazy as this sounds, maybe Elijah Mitchell. Nobody's talking about Elijah Mitchell.
Anyone that's cheap or free has a chance.
Get him for cheap. And in Dynasty, I think he's a solid option to at least hold.
Second for Mike Davis. So a second for Mike Davis. I'm doing that in every league.
There you go. There you go. It goes back. It all comes back full circle, my friend. Just throw a second to get Mike Davis. All right. So with that said, let's move on to our wide receiver position. This is where I think he has the pieces where he can improve his roster at the running back position significantly. He has Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, Robert Woods, Justin Jefferson, Jacoby Myers, we have the People's Champion, Peoples-Jones, Brian Edwards, Amari Rogers, and Terrence Marshall. I really love this wide receiver room. I really there's so much to love in this wide receiver room. So give me your thoughts on this wide receiver. I think this is where you can actually build and upgrade his running back room with his wide receivers.
No, for sure. I mean, I'm trying to make moves, for selling some of these guys off, because if you've got all these high-end receivers, you also don't need this much depth at wide receiver. Much rather have this depth at running back because you have so much high-end wide receiver. So fix it somewhere, right? Maybe it's like we said, Justin Jefferson is an amazing sell right now. You can basically get whatever you want. Maybe it is that extra running back, or it's another wide receiver and a first-round pick, right? Like for this team, like who would be a good receiver that's young enough but still productive? Like honestly, Stephon Diggs. Like what's it going to cost the Stephon Diggs manager to get Justin Jefferson, right? Maybe it's not that much added, but if it's just incremental moves like that, you're getting a little bit added each time. That's extra draft capital you have.
Is that really a difference though? Like, so me personally, if I have Justin Jefferson, I'm selling him. I want 2 players. I want an RB and a wide receiver. I want to help 2 positions, not just one. Mm-hmm. So I would like to move. If I'm moving Justin Jefferson, I want I probably would say someone like a CD Lamb and an RB. Like, I don't think CeeDee Lamb has... You see,
Lamb's pretty high valued in Dynasty, maybe more so that his production matches, right? So that would be a tough one, too, where you're not really... Like, the running back you're getting with Lamb's probably not that great. It's probably the same thing as Diggs.
Okay, let me ask you this.
But to go a little lower value-wise.
This is, of course, requiring that the team does have both these players. CeeDee Lamb and Kareem Hunt. Would you do that for Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, that's... Dynasty wide receiver run, I almost expect a better. I feel like you can get more for Jefferson, so I would say no. If I've got the Jefferson, I am holding him out for the absolute best offer. Right, like it's going to be so ridiculous that it's almost the other team almost shouldn't pay it. Right, like that's kind of where Jefferson's value lies.
Etienne.
Yeah, now we're talking. I'd like that so much that I'd be willing to add something to Jefferson on that. Like Jefferson in a second to get CD and Etienne, right? Or like something like that I would probably do. Like, I like that. Yeah. I don't know if that's... How about
CD Lamb, Michael Carter?
I like Carter, but that might be a little too low. Again, yeah, I don't think that's enough. I think we're getting in a good range though. Like, right, it's between like comparing the rookies, right? So it's not the first round rookie. That's maybe a little too much, but it's also not the fourth round rookies from this year either.
See them, Javonte Williams.
The same thing that's the same thing with Etienne. Like if I'm selling Jefferson for that, I'm willing to add a little bit on the Jefferson side to make that happen. Yes.
Okay, so I think
same thing. Jefferson in a second for CD and Williams. I think I'd do that. Again, is the Lamb manager doing that though? I don't know, because Lamb is viewed pretty highly.
Lamb is viewed very highly. Okay, is Terry McLaurin too high then?
That might be it. That might be it. Because I don't know that. Because I remember I made a trade and this is last year, and now that Lamb's in the year, into his second year, maybe his price is even higher. But I remember I sold McLaurin, or I sold Lamb, or the rookie pick that I was gonna use on CD Lamb. I don't know if it ended up being Lamb actually, but I sold that pick for McLaurin. So in my mind, I was selling CD Lamb for McLaurin and Latavius Murray, right? And there was, it was a league with a point per carry, so that those running backs that are going to get volume, I like Latavius Murray a bit more than most, but clearly Lamb's valued ahead of McLaurin is the point of that story. So that might be it. That might be the name actually, where you get a young receiver who's only in his third year, but still pretty productive.
Chris Godwin's another one.
Yeah. If you want to go even up a little more in age, coming off like Godwin, like he was the wide receiver 2 in Dynasty entering the 2020 season, and now he's fallen maybe even outside the top 10 in some circles, right? So such a massive drop, and like while he's playing with Tom Brady, and I get that. Okay, you need to adjust the new quarterback, but like, yeah, people I think are overreacting a little too strongly to Godwin from last year. He was hurt, and they kind of dropped him, and maybe he never should have been wide receiver 2 anyway, but. Yeah, those are some good names there. The bonus you're getting added on to give up Jefferson should make it worth it. So they're just example of trades, but maybe also this league doesn't overly value Jefferson, and you're actually better off selling Cooper or selling more or Woods for maybe lesser pieces where you get the better value. So I'm looking like I'm going to make aggressive. If I'm this team, I'm making aggressive offers trying to sell these wide receivers. I think start with Jefferson, but if you're not seeing the offer you like, don't be afraid to try and shop one of the other older guys that are still productive.
Robert Woods would not be a bad option. Now he's relatively speaking older up in age, but I think he has solid 2 or 3 years. As long as Stafford is there, I think Robert Woods will return that low wide receiver 1 to high wide receiver 2 margin.
But he's not going to give you that price and trade value. So actually, Woods is the one you definitely don't want to sell, because I know Shane Manila from Dynasty Trades HQ. He was kind of saying this year he realized on his teams he had tons of Robert Woods, so he went and tried to do a massive sell Robert Woods this offseason, and he was not getting the prices he wanted. No one's giving up first. No one's giving up young receivers. So Woods is one of those where it's already probably too late. Like his value is going to outweigh his production way outweighs his value. And the fact this team has Stafford makes it a good stack. So yeah, I'd look to try and sell one of the younger guys, Jefferson more.
Etienne Woods.
Etienne Woods. Oh, straight up. Oh, Etienne, no doubt. I'm a running back guy, but especially in this league where you have to start 3 running backs and 2 wide receivers, I don't think the Etienne manager does that. I don't think there's any way that happens.
Javonte Williams, same thing?
Same thing, yeah. No, the running backs are going to be too highly valued. I know you hate Josh Jacobs. I don't think the Josh Jacobs manager would sell Jacobs just for Woods.
I would in a heartbeat. Oh, absolutely.
I know you would.
In a heartbeat,
I wouldn't, though. Not with this set. Not with these league settings. Not with where you have to start 3 running backs. I'm not selling a running back unless I'm getting a running back. That's kind of that thing, right? Like I'm not. It's. I don't even know if the value is that off. It's the process of the trade. If I'm selling Josh Jacobs as like he's my running back and I'm selling to get extra production, I want a running back. I don't want to just do it for Robert Woods because I feel wide receiver is so replaceable.
All right. So with that, let's move on to the tight end position. The tight ends, he only has 2, and he doesn't need more than that because look at the 2 he has. He has Kittle and Pitts. Mind you, you can only start one tight end. You can flex the other one. So he's of course starting the one tight end.
You have to start 2 tight ends. I'm pretty sure. I thought that's what the lineup said. It's 2 tight end spots and then 2 flex. So you have to start 2 tight ends.
So you have to start 2 tight ends.
That was the one thing. I was saying, like the wrinkle that really caught my eye, and I love having those 2. But maybe even more so than running back depth, you need tight end depth. You need a third guy in there for bye weeks. I mean, for both Pitts and Kittle are going to have a bye week, right? That's it. You can't escape that. And maybe this manager's waiting in season to just pick up someone cheap when he sees them produce. But there has to be a plan to get at very least a third tight end in there. But in 2 tight end, like when you have to start 2, I'm much more aggressive on tight end than I am on wide receivers. Like, okay, selling Jefferson.
Wouldn't this be a great point? Sell one of them. Why sell when you're wide receiver? You can sell. Now think about this. Don't you think the tight end would be more valued in that league because you have to start 2 of them? So wouldn't he get a better value with selling one of these tight ends? They're both young. They're both top 5 tight ends in Dynasty. Actually, I think I have Kittle my number 1 tight end in Dynasty. As a matter of fact.
do too. Yeah, I have Kittle number 1. Frankly, the consensus last year was Kittle was the number 1 Dynasty tight end. And I mean, Kelsey's gotten a year older, so I don't know why it suddenly changed. Yes, Kelsey had a ridiculously amazing 2020 season, but it's like that was crazy even for his standards, right? Like he has room to regress back to his average and still be the tight end 1. That's fine.
And still exactly.
But like last year though, I mean 2019, sorry, and before the 2020 season, Kittle was going ahead of Kelsey in every dynasty startup I did. Like trade value wise, Kittle was the number 1 dynasty tight end. So why that now Kelsey's now a year older, closer to retirement, suddenly like it's flipped, right? And
Kelsey hasn't shown any signs of slowing down.
Last year was his best season ever, right? So, but I also think that's a little dangerous. And I mean, in 2019, Kelsey and Kittle scored, I think, identical points per game. It was like just under 20 points per game and half-point PPR. So, like at Kittle's peak and at Kelsey's average, they're basically identical. What we saw last year is Kittle was very injured, and Kelsey kind of took it to a new level. Is that new level repeatable? I don't know. Like, if
it's repeatable, it's on this offense. It's on this offense, and it's repeatable. That's the crazy part.
But either way, we're saying, I still have Kelsey at Dynasty tight end 2, and
I'm at 3. I have Kelsey at 3. Where do you have Pitts?
I have Pitts at 6. I'm not buying in that heavy, and I'm cold on it. I'm willing to kind of miss out on Pitts, just not being aggressive on him. Honestly, like he's viewed it and sometimes as the dynasty tight end 1. So to your point, Pitts might be the sell, but it's also very specific. Like if in this type of league, if I'm selling Pitts, I definitely want a tight end back, and I want an elite tight end. So
there's no question you have to go.
You can only really sell Pitts to maybe 3 other teams, right? Whoever is Kelsey, whoever is Waller, whoever is Hawkinson, whoever is Mark Andrews, right? And you're going to get more added to those players, but I'm not dipping any lower than that on the tight end. Like I'm not selling Pitts to the Goddard manager.
100% agree with you there.
So it's doable, but it's also really specific. Very few players that you're actually trading for Pitts. So, if you can get Kelsey and a ton added on for this team that's trying to win, that'd be great. That would be maybe ideal. So, but is the Kelsey manager willing to overspend to get Pitts? Like that's the discussion that 2 managers have to kind of have. And if it's not, and and the Waller manager says no, the Hawkinson manager isn't willing to give up much. Same with the Andrews manager, you might as well just hold Pitts and then try and build that third tight end somewhere else. So I think there's a lot of discussions to have, but also be careful, right? Like with guys like Jefferson and Pitts, we're saying yes, they're absolute sells, but only if you're getting the tight end 1, the wide receiver 1 price for them. Like that's kind of what their price tag is right now, and it's. I guess the good news, especially with Jefferson, is all you have to do is find one manager out of the other 11 that thinks that. So it makes him probably the easier sell to me. Whereas like the Pitts manager, you got to convince the Kelsey manager that it's worth it to overpay to go from Kelsey to Pitts. You got to convince the Waller manager that it's same thing, the overpay. Like if you believe in Hawkinson, that may be more attainable. Just Hawkinson hasn't broken out yet. And again, I really like Andrews. That one's probably where like the Andrews manager is probably going to give up a ton for Pitts. So if you can make that trade happen, I know I've got a couple dynasty teams with Kittle and Andrews. So I kind of like that stack. I've had that before. So I definitely like that. So yeah, Pitts and Jefferson, they're great sells, but you got to get that elite price tag for them.
I could not agree with you more, and I can't even say I don't even have a rebuttal to that because I think that's 100% accurate, and that's exactly what I do. If there's a place to upgrade at your RB position at wide receiver, or use one of these tight ends to do it. With that, Kyle, it's time. It's ranking time. Where do you think, off of a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the least and 10 being yes, give me this team, it's a title team, where would you rank this roster on a scale from 1 to 10?
It's funny. A couple weeks ago, I had a team where I was like conflicted. Okay, is this a 7? Is this an 8? And I ultimately ended on a 7.5 for it, which actually kind of does feel appropriate because I really feel like I prefer this team to that team. But I also think with the the long-term questions at quarterback and the lack of both running back and tight end depth, what I think is important, I can't give it a 9. So I think 8 is actually super appropriate. So I feel like I've kind of been pretty good at where I've had teams so far. Like everything's kind of lining up. I'm not doing like the NBA dunk contest where I'm giving everyone a 10 and suddenly, oh wait, this one's clearly better than the other one we gave a 10, but we don't have 11. So I would say for this one, I would give this team an 8.
You'll give it an 8, my friend.
It's better than that team I gave a 7.5 to 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I think 8 actually feels appropriate for this team.
I am going to actually, I'm in a good mood today. You know what? I'm going to agree with you 100%. I would also give this team an 8. And the only reason why this team is not 9, I do think this team has potential to actually contend for top 3. I don't know if you're necessarily a title team because you're strong at wide receiver, tight end, QB. The problem is at running back, though. Miles Sanders has way too much competition with Boston Scott there, with Kenneth Gainwell they drafted, who's a great, I think the best pass catching back in that backfield. Actually, you could make the case he was the best pass catching back in this draft, for that matter. Eckler, health concerns. I think Montgomery. It would not shock me. Montgomery ends up being your best running back, because Eckler has.
He was RB5 last year, right?
Eckler is health issues, and Miles Sanders has competition. So that's where my concerns lie, which is why I give you an 8, which puts our overall ranking at 8. So with that said, fellas, this was fun, Kyle. I love debating. This was a lot of fun talking about Dynasty wide receivers. Next week, everybody, catch us next week with Kyle. Of course, again, the doc will return as well. And we have our guest, I'll let you introduce him next week. But please catch us every Thursday again at same time, 7:30 Eastern, fellas. Have a good one, everyone.